Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day, and our co-sponsor CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory prices and delivery of cards for Magic Online. I'm Evan Irwin, and we get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
Hello.
Ruben Bressler.
Hi there, I'm looking forward to this episode on Double Masters.
Double your masters, double.
So we get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
Yep. How's it going?
Ruben Bressler.
Hi, I'm looking forward to this episode on Double Masters.
Quite the fad here of doing two things and having twice everything in the packs and whatnot.
I'll have you guys know, to the listeners, we bounced around a couple of ideas of like things we could have done for this episode. We talked about having 20 choices, like double the list. We talked about doing like a part 1 and part 2. I'll admit I was kind of the party pooper on some of those because I had a really bad week last week. I was sick, I was working a lot, and I didn't really have the energy to do 2 lists. But we did try, and we did come up with some cute things.
Yeah. And we also have quite the hefty list this week. Not a lot of overlap for any of us.
No,
yeah, there's a
I
lot
think
of
that
unique
says how
cards.
good the set is.
The set's really dope. This
It's
is
also
a huge
massive.
set.
It's 384 cards, all reprints.
Yeah.
A lot of them I can't think of a card. I mean, obviously I can't think of it because then I wouldn't, think of it. But there are a ton of the rate at which the cards are wanted in this set is like
They put a lot
this
of
reprinted,
value
this reprinted, this reprinted, and it's not just the mythics and the rares; it's everything.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of good uncommons that are in there. Yep. Basalt Monolith, for example. First time foil for that card.
Yeah.
A lot of first time foil stuff and stuff moving into Pauper, which is nice. Then you get like the actual factual goat behind the curtain, Ravenous Trap at rare. Oh my god.
That was an interesting one. Yeah.
Oh.
That was like when they moved Aether Vial up to rare.
No. Aether Vial was, even back then, a $20-30 plus card, right?
Sure.
This is a 50-cent uncommon that is now a
rare
25-cent rare or whatever. I don't know. It's absolutely ridiculous. Where Manamorphose, your $6 to $7 uncommon,
that would have been a good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they reprint Manamorphose in this set. It's
Yeah,
unbelievable. I can't imagine what they were thinking. But I guess they needed to make a booby prize, and so we got one. Whatever.
Well, they knew Aaron wouldn't accept uncommon graveyard hate.
It's true.
So at least it's at rare.
They knew I was watching. They're like, we got to put something in here, but she's right.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I can't wait for the excuses of like, well, for the limited format, like, no, dude. Get out of here. Anyway, we also began with our choice, the top comment from last week, in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most eloquent and letting us know what card we did not choose as one of our top 10 -1/-1 counter cards. Ruben?
Speaking of dragging Aaron, it was a pretty consensus pick of the card that wasn't made, and I decided to go with Toll Shack. Toll Shack, baby. Toll Shack, baby. Okay. Who writes, the disrespect and negligence needed to leave the queen, capital Q, of -1/-1 counters off this list almost boggles the mind, especially when you pick the Scorpion God and Yawgmoth over Hapatra, Vizier of Poisons. I'd be happy to provide Erin with all my social media info so she can block me, if it means giving her and her army of snakes the respect they deserve.
Oh my god. I love that the honorable mentions are turning into like the drag Aaron show.
Yeah.
Well, look, there was at one point you were talking about either like snakes or something, or even about a queen. Mm-hmm. And I, one of the fun things for me about the show is I'm like, okay, I know what card you chose, and I'm literally typing in, Patra or whatever. Nope, not the
Something
pick.
else.
And then it just never showed up. I can't.
My reasoning was I had put her on a lot of lists, and so I didn't want to. Mm-hmm. It was kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't. Where it's like if I put her on the list, then YouTube's going to be like, Erin's being predictable. She doesn't have range. And then if I don't, well, then it's you didn't pick a Patra, and it's like I don't know what they want me to do.
Right.
That's the position we're in. For those who don't know, Hapatra, Vizier of Poisons, is a black and a green mana for a rare legendary human cleric from Amonkhet. It's a 2/2, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may put a -1/-1 counter on target creature, and whenever you put one or more -1/-1 counters on a creature, create a 1/1 green snake creature token with Death Touch.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a pretty neat card to build around.
Very good. I still have the deck put together. It gets out of hand so quickly. No one really deals with it, at least whenever I've played with it. I love to tell the story of how when I first purchased the deck, I like to buy the tokens that go along with the deck as well. And I remember picking up like 6 or 7 snakes. I was like, someone's going to stop me. I was like, no one's going to like let this get out of hand. Oh no, girl. I ran out of snakes like my first go round. And I was like, okay, I guess I better go back to Cool Stuff and buy like a dozen more snakes. And there have been games where I've run out of those too, where if you get like a Carnifex demon going, you're going to run out of snakes. Like it just gets out of hand so fast.
You know, I'm always reminded when we talk about snakes, all the way back in the day, Visions has a card called Snake Basket.
Yeah.
I love Snake Basket. It's absolutely fantastic. And it's also nice that card isn't very expensive. It's only like $1. That's great.
Yeah.
Considering they only made it, twice or something?
Right.
6th edition in Visions. All right. Anyway, so we get started by talking about our top 10 double masters cards. I'm going to just pause on number 10 because it's higher on somebody else's list. So, Aaron, can you get us started with your number 10?
Yeah, my number 10 is a card that I just recently had the joy of playing with. It's been around for a while. I've heard it was good, but it wasn't until I started playing with it that I realized just how busted it is. My number 10 is Greater Good. So Greater Good is 2 colorless and 2 green. It was originally printed in Urza's Saga. It's an enchantment. It simply says sacrifice a creature, draw cards equal to the sacrifice creature's power, and then discard 3 cards. At the time I picked this up, it was like a $10 card, which is a lot for me. I'm more of a budget EDH player. And so I was like, this better be good. This is $10 whole. Can't believe this. And I took it for a spin in my Cathril deck, and boy, did I do dumb things. I had a 12/12 Splinter Fright, which I sacrificed to this. I drew, it was a Talpa and 2 other things, discarded them, and then I brought out Cathril, and I had a really good time. It's rare to see discard in green. That's usually something you think of with red or maybe black. But green having a sort of kind of looting effect is really odd. And it's just, and I knew it was going to be good when I played it for the first time because the table groaned and I had never played with the card before. So I was like, what? It's just a Greater Good. And they were like, bless your heart. And once it got going, I was like, oh my God. And I immediately ran to Twitter and I was like, I get it now.
They gotta let us play this card in standard with the Kamigawa Dragons. Oh my God.
Yep.
You haven't lived.
Almost won Worlds in 2005. Frank Karsten lost the finals with Greater Gift. The Gifts Ungiven Greater Good Goryo's Vengeance deck that was like, play a Kokosho, draw 5, discard 3. Vengeance, draw 5, discard 3. Like, yeah.
It was dope. And like being able to play Yosei and tap down all their permanents and stuff was fantastic. Because you actually got to type, you got to tap down permanents back in those days.
Yes.
Like, tap their lands, which was nice. Greater Good is fantastic. And it's seen a couple printings, but it's very popular, clearly.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious. All right, Ruben, what's your number 10?
My number 10 is, we mentioned briefly, first-time foils. This one is, in fact, a first-time non-promo foil. The only foil you can get of this presently was at the Commander 2011 launch party. But you will be able to get your pack foils of Vishkal Blood Arbiter for the very first time in this set. Vishkal Blood Arbiter, 4 colorless white, black, black. For a legendary creature vampire. It's a 5/5 with lifelink and flying and lifelink. It also has sacrifice a creature, put X +1/+1 counters on Vishkal Blood Arbiter, where X is the sacrifice creature's power, and remove all +1/+1 counters from Vishkal, target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn for each +1/+1 counter removed in this way. So I've seen a couple of Vishkal decks. I knew that people were clamoring to have this in like regular foils. The Commander launch party ones aren't exactly the most common things ever. They're about $5 right now, and now that they're going to be in Double Masters, you can probably cut that even in half.
Yeah, this Commander doesn't see too much play, presumably because it takes a little bit of setup and it's also pretty expensive. It's 7 mana. And, with the way that Commander has become, the power creep on Commander is very real. I don't see this card too much, but when I have seen it, it's always been very impressive. It's always a card that you need to deal with because once you do have the board state to really lean on it, it gets nutty pretty quick.
Yeah, the ability to sacrifice creatures for no mana or no life payment, and then when you do that and you're able to move those counters around and just like kind of basically sort of manage the entire board in many ways.
Vishkal is also one of those one-shot possible commanders.
Yeah.
Where you can get it up to 21 power in one turn very quickly. So,
Yeah.
And it's out of nowhere. Gotcha. All right. So moving here to number 9. Ruben, what's number 9?
So one of the other exciting things about Double Masters isn't just first-time foils, but also downgrades in rarity, particularly things that become legal in Pauper. And one of the new Pauper legal cards is also my number 1 overall card from the Hour of Devastation set. My number 9 for this set, Double Masters, is ABRADE. ABRADE is a colorless and a red. It's an instant, and it is a common in Double Masters. Choose one. Deal 3 damage to target creature, or destroy target artifact. Big deal, I think, this one coming down into Pauper.
Oh, it's giant. Like there's been artifact decks that have been very sort of oppressive in many ways. And ABRADE is this new thinking, dual mode, digital friendly. You get X or you get Y, but both of the effects are good. And this is exactly what you want, the type of removal that you want against all those affinity decks or affinity type decks in Pauper. And of course, just dealing 3 damage to a creature is always good.
Yeah, I mean, this card sees play in both Legacy and Vintage. Vintage being a very artifact heavy format, ABRADE having those artifact decks as well in the mono red prison decks. Even just the Delver decks sometimes can be caught running this, where 3 damage, anything 3 or less is usually a dog whistle to older formats, because most things cost that much, or they have power and toughness sort of in that range. And so like you said, the fact that it's an instant, it's modal, it's almost never dead, it's a great sideboard card, but it ends up in quite a lot of main boards as well.
Absolutely. All right. Aaron, what's number 9?
My number 9 is a card that I've always fantasized about playing with, but it was always so darn expensive. And it looks like the price has gone down significantly in recent years. It's certainly going to go down with Double Masters. And so I look forward to trying this in my Sharoom deck. My number 9 is ARCUM DAGSSON. So ARCUM DAGSSON is 3 colorless and a blue. It's a legendary creature, human artificier. Originally printed in Cold Snap. For 2 power and 2 toughness, you can tap it. Target artifact creature's controller sacrifices it. That player may search their library for a non-creature artifact card, put it onto the battlefield, and then shuffle their library. I said it before, I'm a huge fan of the Pilgrim's Eyes, the Skittering Surveyors. I would love to sacrifice them and get a Darksteel Reactor. That sounds great to me. Or, sacrifice them and get a God Pharaoh's Gift. It's fine. And so I'm really excited to be able to play with this. And like I said, I just couldn't really afford it before. But pre-sale, it's going for between $5 and $7, which is fine. The Cold Snap version's about 15 or so. So huge difference, and I look forward to getting a copy of this.
Yeah, this was already like a $20 card before
and a popular character from Magic lore too.
Yeah. Yep. ARCUM DAGSSON, also famous for the Astrolabe. But even before the Astrolabe, ARCUM DAGSSON was a very popular CEDH card back in the day, at the beginning of CEDH. Whenever I see an ARCUM DAGSSON in a game of Commander, I know that there's some stupid stuff coming.
Shenanigans are afoot. This was bumped to Mythic, which I thought was also impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it makes sense too. Yeah, the legend of the lore from a not exactly recent, not exactly well-opened set makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So something happened here with my number 9, and I would love to know how many times this has actually happened. How many times have they reprinted a card and they've chosen to choose the older art rather than the new art that they had just printed a few years ago? It does happen. It's not like the rarest thing in the world, but it's usually to me very significant. I'm like, wow, they went back to the OG, artwork. That was awesome, because I've got nothing but love, and holy cow, I had no idea how expensive they were, but they went back to the original art for ISOCHRON SCEPTER. ISOCHRON SCEPTER also bumped to rare as of Eternal Masters, which is awesome.
With this card?
This card is amazing. ISOCHRON SCEPTER is 2 generic mana. You put some respect on that name.
Yeah.
2 generic mana. We dunk on Aaron some more. ISOCHRON SCEPTER is 2 generic mana for a rare artifact that has imprint. When ISOCHRON SCEPTER enters the battlefield, you may exile an instant with convert a mana cost at 2 or less from your hand. 2 generic mana, tap : you may copy the exiled card. If you do, you may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. It's amazing.
Put some spec on that name. Scepter Chant and Scepter Control back in the early 2000s. Those were forces to be reckoned with. I mean, they were never really superpowers, but they were always there. And you could, putting a mana drain on an Isochron Scepter and Cube, or, putting just anything on an Isochron Scepter and it doesn't die immediately feels really good.
Yeah, they went back and forth with the artworks on this one. There was a From the Vault that they reprinted the artwork in Eternal Masters, but then Double Masters shows up with the previous artwork they also use in the dual decks.
Oh,
which
wow,
is
the F&M
crazy.
promo looks wild with the crazy eye. With
the eye, yeah.
That's
I love
cool.
that one.
That was the one I had in my cube, and it was awesome. This card is dope for cubes. It's fantastic for casual decks. And in basically when Extended existed, this ran part of Extended. This was
because Orum's Chant was the big combo with this card. You could also put Abeyance. There were a bunch of just great things to put on an Isochron Scepter.
The Crazy Eye is also a Magic Online promo too. So if I ever need this card, that's the version I'm playing.
Well, let me guess, it costs like 2 cents or something. Like $20 paper, about 4 cents online. Like, whatever, it's fine. We're to number 8. Aaron, what's number 8?
My number 8 is a card that I alluded to in our -1/-1 episode, in that it just completely overshadowed all of the other cards like it when it was in Standard. It sees no eternal play, pun intended, eternal, but it was still going for anywhere, upwards of $40 thanks to Commander, maybe even like Historic or Pioneer. My number 8 was the Scarab God. So the Scarab God is 3 colorless, a blue and a black. It was originally printed in Hour of Devastation. A legendary creature god, 5 power, 5 toughness. This card does a lot. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses X life, and you scry X, where X is the number of zombies you control. So that's really fine. You'll take that. 2 colorless, a blue and a black. Exile a target creature card from a graveyard, yours or theirs, and create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. Wow. When the Scarab God dies, return it to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. This card does everything. Even if you, and this card follows the pattern of a lot of broken cards where you don't even have to try. Like, you don't have to go out of your way to play a zombies deck. You're going to make your own zombies and you're going to get that first ability going. You don't have to fill your graveyard like a reanimator deck. You can just play Magic, or your opponent can just play Magic, and you're going to find something that you can take there. It makes opposing graveyard decks really awkward because it's like graveyard hate in a way. So you don't want to give them anything, and it has this nasty little death trigger where it makes it very, very hard to deal with. And so this card dominated Standard. It completely overshadowed these, the Scarab, or the Locust God and the Scorpion God when it was Standard legal. Every deck was running this. You could play blue-black control, you could play energy, and it was just a powerhouse from start to finish.
Every once in a while, Wizards is like, this is the best thing that you can do. And they're like really clearly painting in your face, this is the best thing you can do at this mana cost, at this rate. These abilities are fantastic. There's no downside anywhere close to this card. And that's how it played. It was freaking amazing from start to finish in Standard.
I mean, we are obviously big apologists for 5-drops that don't do anything the turn they come into play. But when this card was spoiled, we just freaked out because it was live during our show. It was given to Wedge got it, and the video came out at midnight. Yeah. And
we were just wrapping up the show. Like, we were just kind of saying our goodbyes. I usually don't really watch it live as I get distracted. And so once we get to the end of the show, at that point, I'll usually open up Twitch and I'll say, like, thanks everybody. And right around that time was when I glanced at my social media and I lost my mind. I was like, this cannot be real. And we all just, fangirled out.
Card is amazing. Ruben, what's number 8?
My number 8 is another first-time foil, I believe, unless it came out as a foil in Mystery Boosters, which I don't think it did. It's a somewhat popular Commander card, not as popular as I would have thought, but they're still about $5 and a first-time foil. My number 8 is Deep Glow Skate.
Ooh.
Deep Glow Skate, originally from Commander 2016, 4 colorless and a blue for a 3/3 fish. When Deep Glow Skate enters the battlefield, double the number of each kind of counter on any number of target permanents.
Wow.
So,
this
Atraxa Will and Rowan Kenrith.
Love it.
Toothy and Pier. Rayhan, the last of the Abzan decks, with whatever you partner it with, probably Ishai, which is more +1/+1 counters. This card is super fun.
This is a one-shot doubling season.
Yeah.
And it always feels like the nail in the coffin. Like when you're facing this in Commander, your opponent's probably already doing well, and there's a part of you that's like, I'm gonna find something, or you're looking around at the people next to you, and you're like, we're gonna come up with something, right, guys? And then they play the Deep Glow, and you're like, we're done. Like that's just. Yeah. There's always just this feeling of finality when this card comes out, where it's like, well.
There you go. So, for my number 8, Wizards loves to print mill cards. People like mill cards. Mill is interesting. It's never been that competitive for a reason. I don't think I wanted to be competitive. It was bad enough with the Teferi enchantment and M21, which was ridiculous. But it was really cool to try to put together mill decks, and it unfortunately started getting really expensive because they just wouldn't reprint one of the best 2-mana artifacts ever. And that is Mesmeric Orb, which they did reprint. Thank God. First time since Mirren. It's been 15 freaking years since they made more copies of this card. Card is fantastic. 2 generic mana for a rare artifact that says whenever a permanent becomes untapped, that permanent's controller mills a card. It has the words mills a card on it, which is fantastic.
Nice.
So this is a fantastic reprint. Totally warranted. Helps sell the set. It's wonderful, and I'm glad they finally gave us another version.
I've been running into this in Modern lately. Where people are trying to make these mill decks happen, particularly because of Uro. And so they're just like, we'll mill, we'll get Uro, we'll play all sorts of delve cards, we'll archive trap you. I was just like, Lord, what have I done that was unchristian to deserve this?
Well, that's
they're putting cards into your graveyard for you, so it can't be that bad.
It's different when I'm in control.
It's true. It is different
it
when
hits
you're
a little
driving
different.
the bus.
It hits a little different.
There we go, exactly.
Yeah,
it is adorable that they gave us Mesmeric Orb and Basalt Monolith, both in the sets that we can run 4 Horsemen and Limited.
It's true.
Yeah.
Cross your fingers. All right, let's move to number 7. Aaron, what's your number 7?
My number 7 is of particular importance to me because our friend Joe, who is our friend, he's a listener, he compiles the show notes for us. He just gave me a copy of this card. Because it was really expensive at the time and I needed a copy for my Zancha deck. But costs shouldn't be an issue going forward. It's currently pre-ordering for about $9 to $10. My number 7 is Wound Reflection. So Wound Reflection is 5 colorless and a black. It's an enchantment. At the beginning of each end step, each opponent loses life equal to the life they lost this turn. So if you're playing Zancha, and everybody gets to sort of take a turn on you, and everyone gets to pay colorless mana and draw a card at your expense, at each end step, you're then losing life for that. And so it turns into this weird game of tug of war. It gets really, really painful. And it just creates some really neat lines and sort of politics in the game. And I remember it was really, really expensive for a time. And I was like, I cannot. It's one of those cards you look at and you're like, do I need this? And then now it's at a nice, reasonable price.
I think it got up to $50 almost, something like that.
Wild, yeah.
It was crazy.
I mean, all of the reflections, the entire cycle, see play in Commander, and all of them needed reprints, and they all got reprints. I don't know if Mana Reflection's going to appear on the list later, but that's a $42 bill before Double Masters came along. Wound Reflection right behind it. Big pickup for being able to have slightly more budget versions.
And then a great, just inclusion for the set. These are all cool, somewhat not crazy expensive, some of them very expensive, but, the entire cycle was well loved, and so we at least get one of these back, which is awesome. Ruben, what's your number 7?
My number 7 is the card that I got tagged in the most during the set previews, because recently I talked about a card called Leyline of Abundance. And while discussing Leyline of Abundance recently, I said that it sounded like this card. And then it came out and they were like, we did it, Ruben, we did it. And then they showed us Leonin Abunas. Leonin Abunas is 3 colorless and a white, originally from Mirrodin, 2/5 cat cleric, originally printed as artifacts you control can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponents control. Now, for the first time ever, artifacts you control have hexproof.
Nice.
So updated wording.
I'll take it. Well,
this was one of the targets that was popular in the old 12 post decks. When you would go get a Darksteel Colossus or a Platinum Angel, you'd tooth and nail, and then you'd go get Abunas Platinum Angel, or Abunas duplicate and take out their big thing, and it was it had its day in the sun.
It did.
So.
It was fun. I mean, getting the Platinum Angel out with this just felt so much like game over, and like, yeah, maybe you got a removal spell for this, but you want to have 2 for the Platinum Angel as well, and yada yada. Super cool card, and I'm glad to see another printing of it. It's printed in Mirrored and Arch Enemy as well. So
yep.
I also like the new art. The new art's really nice.
Yes, I really do like this Carl Critchlow art for Leonin Abunas.
From the house of Abunas.
Sometimes cards get popular and get played, first of all, because they're sort of ubiquitous in the game. And then later, if Wizards doesn't reprint them for a while and they finally do reprint them and you're like, whoa, that card is how much again? Because I was pretty shocked. Because not only, first of all, it's a sweet old school card. It's great. It's got the Kev Walker art, which is some of my favorite ever. It is the pre-release foil, which we don't have those these days, but whatever. If you pre-order a box, you'll get the foil version of Wrath of God, because it turns out that thing just turned into like a $9 to $10 card overnight everywhere.
It did.
And yeah, Wrath of God, nice and simple. Been here since the beginning. 2 white, 2 generic mana, rare sorcery, destroy all creatures. They can't be regenerated.
It's a descriptor, which happens with only like the most, classic iconic cards. When you can say it's a Wrath, you know exactly what it means, even if you're not casting Wrath of God.
Yeah, Wrath has been here since Alpha, of course, and I was playing it back in the day, and it just feels like there's certain rites of passage as you get through Magic and as you begin playing more competitively and whatnot, even just as you learn the game. And so, I remember clearly when I first read Wrath of God, and I'm like, why in the world would you want to kill your own stuff? And then they're like, well, if they're head on board, you're not. And they're like, there's so that, I mean, I remember that moment as a really cool moment in Magic, going like, wait a minute, if I Armageddon with a land tax out, it's not so symmetrical anymore, and then I twiddle my mustache and run off. But yeah,
there
Wrath of God is awesome.
25 printings of Wrath of God. That is incredible. I remember that at one point, a young Ruben, this was college age Ruben actually, the pride of my collection was a play set of Portal Wrath of Gods.
Those were nice.
I was so proud of those things. I miss them vaguely now.
They were super cool.
My Wrath of God don't want none unless you got buns, hon. I want the old
unless you
Quentin
got Abunas.
I want Quentin. I want the Wrath of God where you see the cheeks. The one.
Sure.
Gotta have the cheeks.
Yeah. The cheeks.
That's the only Wrath of God.
That's the OG right there. They put a butt on a Magic card right there at the beginning.
And once you see it, because I spent a long time not being able to see it, it's all I can see now.
It's the clap of God. With the cheeks.
Wow. We are moving on to number 6.
We can cut that out, probably.
We don't need to cut that out.
Right,
That's
fine.
fun.
No.
Aaron, what's your number 6?
My number 6 is another card that I was so excited about. And if you go back and look at my Twitter feed, those of you who aren't blocked, you can see me tweeting about this card and having kind of a moment where it's like, I don't need this card. I want this card. I don't need this. It's so expensive. And I didn't buy it at the time. And I'm so glad that I didn't, because then they went ahead and printed it and I lost my mind. I snap bought a copy. I can't wait for it to get here. My number 6 is Mana Echoes. So Mana Echoes is 2 colorless and 2 red. It's an enchantment originally printed in Onslaught. This is the first time ever it's been reprinted. And it says, whenever a creature enters the battlefield, you may add an amount of colorless mana equal to the number of creatures you control that shares a creature type with it. This was almost a $60 card when I went looking for it a couple weeks ago. It's now down to about $20. But I have a Pashalik Mons deck that is very, very mana hungry. It has a lot of goblins. And so every time I cast a Krenko's command or something like that, I can make a lot of mana. And so I'm so excited. I literally just shrieked when I saw this. I was like, I couldn't believe they did it, and I'm so happy because this is my jam right here.
Mana Echoes is an unreasonable Magic card. I don't think I've ever lost a game of Commander in which I've resolved this card. It gets very silly very fast in a variety of decks. It's just a wild
I'll have you
ride.
know, Ruben, I took my Pashalik Mons deck for a spin in paper for the first time ever the other day in a webcam game, and I won. You would have been so proud of me. Did you see that board state? Oh my goodness. Did you see all those red cards? That is me.
That's more red cards than a soccer fight.
Jeez. This card absolutely blew me away. I did not expect this thing to be like $50, $60 or whatever. Yeah. This is a $30 mythic from the set. This thing is ridiculous. It's the first time I printed it since 2003 or something. Yeah. It's like 17 years.
You think about there aren't a ton of great red ways. to give permanent ramp.
Right.
That's true.
I mean, you have your artifacts, you have your runaway steamkin. That's like kind of it. This, and also this gives you just boatloads of mana.
Yeah, wow.
Especially if you're making tokens in something like a Marath of the Wild deck or a Pashalik Mons deck.
Right. This is like the definition of the rich get richer.
Yeah.
Yeah. This card, again, I was like, what? First of all, because I didn't come back to Magic until right around Darksteel, you know, I didn't really play a lot of Onslaught, so I didn't really remember this card even existed. And I was like,
Right. I mean, it did nothing at the time.
This was a card I always stared at wistfully, where anytime I would see a deck online, you know, I would see it on EDH Rec, or I would see it on Tapped Out, and I'd be like, oh, this list looks so sweet. I can't afford a Mana Echoes. And I would always just sort of like, oh man. And I would always just, and then the other day I was like, you know, well, you know, I've been saving up money. I'm not really going out. Should I buy Mana Echoes? And it was like, nope, I'm glad I didn't.
there you go. All right. Ruben, what's your number 6?
My number 6 is on my list, partially because it's a very good card that sees a lot of play in older formats, particularly Legacy, like those Shardless Bug kind of decks. I mean, you see it as a pseudo Wrath in Commander as well. But the reason why I'm talking about it is because there's a guy who did the art for this, and he also did the art for Hazazon Tamar, and Ramses Overdark, and Livonia Saloni, and, you know, just ridiculous old cards. The Lady of the Mountain.
Yeah.
And of course, Dakin Blackblade.
Mm-hmm.
And then they brought back Richard Kane Ferguson to do the art for the box topper Toxic Deluge.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Toxic Deluge, 2 colorless and a black. It's a sorcery originally from Commander 2013. As an additional cost to cast this spell, pay X life. All creatures get -X until end of turn. If you are having problems with protection, if you're having problems with indestructibility, you have an etched champion that has protection from everything on the other side of the board. You have a Darksteel Colossus or a Blightsteel Colossus.
Or a Death Shadow you need to beef
or
up.
a Death Shadow that needs to get rid of. Well, guess what? For this low cost of 3 life, or 3 mana and some of your life, you'll be able to get everything and anything off the board.
Yeah, I mean, this card sees play, you know, in Legacy, like you said. It's usually not more than like a 1 of or a 2 of, which really contributes to it being so expensive because, you know, there were very few copies out there to begin with, and then, you know, you weren't really using them that much. And so, yes, it's another one of those cards that people would love to have, and is even for Commander. You know, I've seen this in Commander lists, and I'm like, oh, that'd be really sweet. Why is it $50?
Right.
And even the reprint now is still good, fetching you 15 to 20. Like, woo!
Yeah.
Like,
this is one of those cards that, like, man, I should have just listened to my gut. I was like, I remember the time it was maybe $5, maybe up to $10 at the time. This is way back in the day. And I was like, this is the most efficient Black Wrath that has ever existed. It doesn't need 2 black like Damnation. Right. It's not 4 mana like Damnation.
Right.
It's
That's
3
the big
plus
deals. It's 3 mana.
3 mana in any life, and boom, everything's gone. It gets rid of anything with protection. All the creatures are out of here. Like, this card is incredible. And that's the box topper is just unreal. Just fantastic. Speaking of box toppers that are unreal and just fantastic.
I thought we were doing that in the pre-show.
Oh, hey. Well, this one showed up, and man, do I love me some Mark Poole. One of my boss actually got me a gift one time. He got me Library of Alexandria signed, the playmat that they did for it, the official Ultra Pro one they did.
Nice.
And it's super duper cool, and that art was never meant to be blown up that big, but it's still super duper fantastic. It's one of my favorite cards of Magic, and the guy was great to meet when I was at Origins one year, which is sweet. And so he has turned around and made one of the coolest, most awesome versions of Exploration I have ever seen.
Yeah.
Exploration is 1 green mana for a rare enchantment that says you may play an additional land on each of your turns. This is a $50 plus card. It's been $40 from Conspiracy. It's still fetching almost $20 now. Like, this is a home run from the set.
Yep. One of the main cards in the lands archetype, which doesn't see as much play in Legacy anymore, but it is an extremely powerful card. Also one of only 2 cards banned in Mental Magic, which I always like bringing up. Mark Poole, just a hero. The first Magic cards I ever got signed at little baby Ruben's first Origins game fair. I had my playset of Birds of Paradise signed by Mark Poole.
Yeah. They brought a lot of older artists back for this, which a lot of us were just living for, those of us who've been around for a while. The giant lotus. I mean, this is just gorgeous. Like, Twitter just lost their minds.
For my money, this is the best art in the set.
We are so lucky this is not on the reserve list. Like, it dodged a bullet, I assure you. All right, moving to number 5. Aaron, what's number 5?
We've talked a lot about reprints and how, sets like this really make cards more affordable. And my number 5 is a great example of this, because this was another one of those cards that saw competitive play in Modern specifically. I'm sure it's seen play in other formats, but I remember needing it for Modern, and it was a $50, $60 card. And I remember borrowing, 2 or 3 copies from Chris Van Meter because I just didn't need it that bad and I wasn't going to use it. It's now going for less than $5. Like, this is what it's all about. My number 5 is Engineered Explosives. So Engineered Explosives just costs X. It's an artifact with Sunburst, which means that this enters the battlefield with a charge counter on it for each color of mana spent to cast it. You pay 2 colorless and sacrifice it to destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost equal to the number of charge counters on Engineered Explosives. So this is typically a sideboard card, in the 2 or 3 color decks. You can sometimes even just crack it for 0 if you want to get rid of tokens that might be bothering you. But this card was super expensive. It was reprinted in Modern Masters, Ultimate Masters, and now Double Masters. And this is what it's all about, taking a card that was astronomically high, $50, $60, and for less than $5, you can have it Engineered Explosives. Like, this is a success story right here of why they do this.
No, it's very good. And I also expected Engineered Explosive to kind of go the way of Chalice of the Void, which is a $40 card at this point. It's also mythic. But that it would hold its value over multiple printings a little bit better. But I think at the same time, it's not seen as much constructed play. And they've printed it enough times to sort of, sate the need for all the Commander players. And sweet, it's affordable.
Yeah, these kids today don't know. You would just loop Engineered Explosives with Academy Ruins back in Next Level Blue. Yeah. Or you would play, you'd bring them out of your sideboard in old extended tournaments. Now these kids have Blast Zone that comes in with a counter.
Well, now you play this for tokens. 0, and then you tap it for blue with Urza. That's
true, that too. Yeah.
Goodness gracious, this card. And it's just super sweet. I love this card. Obviously, Blast Zone is terrific. So, all right, Ruben, what's number 5?
My number 5 is another interesting downshift that I think is going to put Pauper on its head, because it has, at various points in its life, been an extremely important piece of multiple decks. Back in 2004 at Pro Tour Kobe, 3 players in that top 8 played Affinity, and it had this card in it. It's easy to forget that the old Affinity decks used to play this card as well for a longer game. And Worlds that year was exactly the same. Then, this card didn't really get to see much play in Affinity anymore, but it did get to see play in the best artifact deck of its day, which was KCI. You would loop and loop and loop Mere Retrievers over and over and over again. And now you're going to get to do that in Pauper.
Oh boy.
2 colorless mana gets you a common from Double Masters. First time ever as a Double Master, common in Double Masters. Originally from Mirrodin. It is an artifact creature mirror. When it dies, return another target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand.
Yep, and there's going to be something weird. It's going to be some weird combo we don't see happening, but out of left field comes Mere Retriever to do something dumb. That's what I'm expecting, essentially. This card rarely does anything sort of fair-ish. Sure. I can see it being kind of fairish in some Commander decks, but like generally, you're using this thing to do something degenerate.
Yeah, usually, you're not using it for value like it was originally intended. It's not just a regrowth. This is a engine piece, and we'll see if it's safe.
There you go. All right. We want to hear to number 5. My number 5 here also, I think, sort of helps dispel the myth that I don't always just kind of, when we talk about master sets, just list the most expensive things, first and go down or whatever. But this was an absolutely incredible box topper. This is a card that was rumored and came true of the rumor itself. And this is the card that basically, ultimately, you really want as your foil box topper in your VIP pack. You want to see Scott Fischer's amazing rendition of Force of Will. Force of Will is 2 blue, 3 generic mana for a mythic instant that says you may pay 1 life and exile a blue card from your hand rather than pay this spell's mana cost and counter target spell. Let me tell you, many years ago, we did not have any respect for Force of Will.
Right.
We just didn't. We just didn't care. It was like whatever. It was just an uncommon from, alliances. Like,
Right. It was just another part of that cycle. I mean, Contagion was the headliner from the pitch cycle from Alliances.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there came a time when the old adage of card quantity and card quality flipped. And that is where Force of Will lives. Force of Will doesn't care that you're 2-for-1ing yourself, as long as it lengthens the game and you get your value out of it. We've now kind of gone away from that again. We're back to 20 years ago, where every card is so good that Force of Will isn't even that great anymore. I mean, it's still a stopgap solution that is necessary. It is the glue that holds the Legacy format together, along with Wasteland. But, every card is so good and does so much similar things that Force of Will is, it's not even as good as it used to be. But it's still ridiculously good.
Yeah.
It's still amazing. And it's also just held its price, even after all these printings. It's $100 card. Like, that's just how it is.
Yeah.
Moving here to number 4. Aaron, what's number 4?
Number 4 is another card that is being reprinted for the first time. I picked up my copies pretty early on when I started playing the Namesake deck in Modern, and it's kind of started spiking recently, probably due to Commander, because people realize that, you can do broken things with it, but sometimes it's also just a decent draw spell as well. My number 4 is Ad Nauseam. Ad Nauseam is 3 colorless and 2 black. It's an instant, originally printed in Shards of Alara. You can reveal the top card of your library and put the card into your hand. You lose life equal to its converted mana cost, and you can repeat this process any number of times. So there's the famous deck in Modern that allows you to draw yourself stupid with Phyrexian Unlife or Angel's Grace and then win the game with Lightning Storm. This is Ad Nauseam Tendrils in Legacy, where you can use this to storm off. It even sees play in the vintage versions as well of Storm. The price was up there as well. I think $40-$50 recently. You have the iconic art by Jeremy Jarvis, who's now an art director, I believe. He's behind the scenes now. But you just have that iconic art of the guy just working and working and working. And just an amazingly powerful card. One of my favorite black spells of all time.
This card is sweet.
Card. It's the combination of name, art, effect, everything you want. And it's powerful too.
Yeah.
And it's not broken powerful. It's exactly the right numbers. It does everything well.
Sometimes you have those cards that are just like everything worked, right?
Yep.
It's the exact mana cost that it should be. The name is fantastic. It fits that sort of mold. It's scary, but it's not like overpowering. Like it keeps it sort of itself in check with the randomness that you don't always control. This card is fantastic, and I can't believe they waited this long to reprint it.
I know, and it's so good. And again, just like the reprint list in this set is masterful.
Yeah. Ruben, what's your number 4?
My number 4, masterful, exactly. My number 4 is commonly on a watch list for being banned in Commander, but as long as it isn't being banned in Commander, it is nice that we now get to have super fancy pants versions of Cyclonic Rift.
Ooh.
Colorless and a blue, instant, return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand, originally from Return to Ravnica, but that's not why we're here, folks. No. Overload, 6 colorless and a blue. You may cast this spell for its overload cost. If you do, change its text by replacing all instances of target with each. And the flavor text on the promo one is, that's what the Switch does, which is great. This card's amazing. Obviously, it also did win a Pro Tour in the hands of I think it was Jeremy Dizani, was Blue Devotion at Pro Tour Theros in Dublin.
Wow.
Had a couple of these in the deck to be able to take stuff out of, to tempo people out. It is a very expensive Magic card, $30 for copies, and hopefully this being reprinted will help. Yeah,
this is a card that has become ubiquitous with Commander. There have been a lot of cries to ban this. A lot of people feel that Commander's worse because of this card. When that box topper came out, every Commander player just grabbed their wallets like, ow. Oh, and even the non-box topper version still fetches you $15 to $20. Like, this is a card that you definitely need to prepare for. You can always feel that it's coming. And the minute I saw that, I was like, they knew. They knew who they were aiming that at.
So how Commander is it that you can get a near mint copy of this card in extended art for about $54, and you can get the foil version for about $58?
Wow.
Commander players and their foils don't always kind of mesh with what you expect the financial world to look like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're back to the box toppers now, aren't we?
Did we ever leave, though?
Did we really? 40 fantastic. I mean, every single card I'm talking about this morning is a box topper. Because they're incredible.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's true. And this one in particular just blew me away. This Wizards did a really good job of the spoiler season. They threw out the Ravenous Traps and the Geist of Saint Traps in there, in the hubbub about a card like this, for example. This is a card that has had a bunch of printings, but it is just one of the most powerful cards that does what it does. This is a card that I got to grill Mike Turian on because I was like, Mother of God, you made the best Birds of Paradise of all time. And he goes, well, isn't Noble Hierarch fun? And I'm like, yeah, it's fun, man, but it's like, holy cow, this card is fantastic. It's 1 green mana for a rare human druid. It's 0/1 with Exalted, which means whenever a creature you control attacks alone, that creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. And it taps for Bant mana. It taps to add green, white, or blue. And the Greg Staples extended art version is absolutely fantastically gorgeous. And this card has been great from day one, and it's still great.
Nice. Down to about $10-15. Cool.
Nice.
Yeah,
keeping it affordable.
I was just going to say, these were up there for a little while.
Right.
These were also a promo for the Pro Tour qualifiers, the WMCQs or something like that. And has seen play in all manner of decks. I mean, you play Noble Hierarch in, aggro decks, in mid-range decks. You even sometimes see them in combo decks like Infect. And then, it's able to just have value early, being a turn 1 ramp creature. And then have value late in being able to pump your creatures and get them later on in the game.
Yeah, it's absolutely terrific. Check out that Judge Gift version that has the old school artwork and the old school, I'm sure the frame is really sweet. Yeah. So that one and this one are just fantastic. And now I think are there 4 or 5 different versions now? Are there 4? Can you run the trollish, I have one of every type or whatever?
That is very important to be able to tilt your opponents.
Right, because Blood Moon got there, and maybe we'll talk about that later. Let's move on here to number 3. Aaron, what's your number 3?
My number 3 might be a little controversial because, in my opinion, this is the first time it's been reprinted. And I know some of you might be like, it was an invention! It was in From the Vault! I don't consider the freaky foil things to be reprints. Like, this is just bare bones, raw reprint. This is what I'm considering its first reprint. My number 3 is Trinisphere.
Nice.
So Trinisphere was originally printed in Darksteel. It's 3 colorless. It's an artifact. It is a rules nightmare. As long as Trinisphere is untapped, remember when tapping artifacts nullified them somehow? As long as Trinisphere is untapped, each spell that would cost less than 3 mana to cast costs 3 mana to cast. So for example, a spell that would cost 1 and a black now costs 2 and a black to cast. It is restricted in Vintage. You can only run 1 copy of it. And it is just a powerful card. Sees a lot of play in prison decks. With the Mishra's Workshop, you can do this on turn 1. It gets rid of your Force of Wills, your Force of Vigors, your Unmasks. Everything just suddenly costs 3 more. And so I've had a lot of rules questions through the years. How does this work with Faithless Looting? How does this work with, Dread Return? I remember clicking it on Magic Online and thinking I had it, and then whoop, you can't do it.
Yep. Force of Will either costs 3 colorless blue, or 3 colorless remove a blue card from your hand and pay a life.
Goodness gracious.
The Moxen costs 3 mana off of this thing. I've played with Trinisphere several times in my career. It is also responsible for removing me from top 8 contention of the one time that I was close to top 8ing a Grand Prix in Chicago in 2007. So
the hell of a magic
I have
card.
good and bad memories about Trinisphere.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a $30+ rare back from Darksteel and whatnot. And Trinisphere is just one of those cards that if you get it out on turn 2 with a Mana Dork, you get it on turn 1 for Mishra's Workshop or whatever, which is ridiculous.
Ancient Tomb Simian Spirit Guide.
Yeah.
It just changes the whole game. The
Three
whole
wins.
game becomes around this stupid 3-mana artifact.
It's another card like Blood Moon, like Ensnaring Bridge, like
They just won't make them like that anymore.
Witchbane Orb. I mean, there are some cards that are just one card combos that end the game by themselves against certain decks.
Oh, there you go. All right. So Ruben, what's your number 3?
My number 3 is a card that is another just classic of every format, and it gets another beautiful treatment here from Ron Spencer, another classic artist. My number 3 is Brainstorm.
Yeah.
The box topper Brainstorm is absolutely fantastic. 1 blue mana gets you an instant that says draw 3 cards, then put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. This card has had a number of different types of art, originally from Ice Age, but then of course the Saprazin Mage from Mercadian Masks. You had it in Beatdown. You had it in various Masters expansions, even in Signature Spellbook Jace, I think.
Yeah.
And it was just a indelible part of the Legacy format. It's the gentleman's agreement of Legacy that Brainstorm is probably too good, but it's what holds everything together is that Brainstorm fetch land, dual land mana base. And so no one would, I mean, if you got rid of Brainstorm, that's not the form. It's not Legacy anymore.
Yeah.
You have to have unfair draw spells to make your format be your format, I guess. Whatever, it's fine. This is just the Mishra's Workshop of Legacy.
And it's also a very skill-intensive card. You know, I remember, I love to tell the story of how when I first started playing Legacy Storm, Ad Nauseam Tendrils, I knew how to Storm. Like, I could do the Dark Ritual, Cabal Ritual, you know, Infernal Tutor. I could do that nonsense. Where I really struggled with the deck, and really, where I really put in the most time with the deck, was figuring out how to brainstorm. Because you have to understand, I don't play with good cards. I play Dread. Right. Come on. And so, like, you have to figure out, like, you know, when to do it, when to play your land. You know, you don't necessarily want to crack your fetch right away. Well, what if you have a Ponder and a Brainstorm? What if you have a Preordain and a Brainstorm? And just one of the most skill-intensive cards I've ever played. And I still, like, you know, kind of shudder at the thought of playing a Brainstorm. So I'm like, this is hard.
and that kind of brain exercise is why Legacy is as interesting as it is most of the time.
Restricted advantage, yeah.
Because they're like, oh, he drew so-and-so off Brainstorm. What's he going to put on top? They're going to crack that fetch land to shuffle it back in?
And also being able to, you know, the worst thing in the world is the main phase Brainstorm. It's just like, oh, girl. Like,
I love main phase Brainstorming.
Oh, I usually wonder what's going on at that point where it's like...
If my opponent end of turn Brainstorms, that's when I'm like, what are you doing? Like, if my opponent casts a Brainstorm at end of turn...
being able to read that much into a play like that is really something. How many cards can you do that with?
Right. Oh, yeah. Brainstorm goes deep. There was a reason this was a activated ability on Jace, for example, and Jace has one in his spell book, which is awesome. Yeah. They've made a ton of versions of this thing, but again, this was the first time they tried to make a really mythic, awesome, you know, version, and they did a great job. Yeah. Well, speaking of Brainstorm for 0 colon on a Planeswalker.
Sure.
My number 3 is Jace the Mind Sculptor. There's only one Planeswalker that I swear to God, I went back and looked. I had like 50 Magic shows or something that said Jace in them somewhere.
Wow.
I had so much digital ink spilled over this one card. I have an entire interview with Mike Turian you can go find where I talked to him for half an hour about how stupid this card is and what they were thinking. And a lot of what Mike had brought up in his article when he talked about spoiling this for Double Masters was a lot of stuff that he had told me, you know, back then. And it was really cool to kind of be like, wow, I wonder how much I've talked about Jace. And I was like, oh my God. There's only one card that has a rap song about it. There's only one card that like saw play both in Standard and Legacy at the same time, ruling both, all ruling those formats. And there's only one box topper they didn't get new art for. Oh no. The Jason Chan art is
that Jason Chan art,
unbelievably iconic. To the point where Wizards one day was like, could you please stop using that artwork? Because we're like kind of tired of it. It's fine. Jace the Mind Sculptor is amazing and is better than all. It is a mythic in the set. It is 2 blue, 2 generic mana for a 3 loyalty legendary Planeswalker Jace. +2 : look at the top card of target player's library. You may put that card on the bottom of that player's library. If you put the card back on top of their library, they've probably lost that game. That's kind of how this works. 0: draw 3 cards and put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order, aka Brainstorm. -1: return target creature to its owner's hand. So you have unsummon. And for -12, this was -9, by the way, until the very last minute when they bumped it to 12. -12: exile all cards from target player's library. Then that player shuffles their hand into their library. This thing was kept in check for so long by Bloodbraid Elf. So long. And everyone was like, this card is bad. This card is unplayable. It doesn't do enough. Blah, 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 blah. Bloodbraid Elf leaves. Format's broken. Just busted right in half.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm glad that we have Jace the Mind Sculptor. And I'm glad that we have it in the form that it's in. Because if you have the Mickey Mouse of Magic, you want to have a card that is the indelible image of it. Jace Beleren's good. Jace Unraveler of Secrets, good. Jace Architect of Thought, good. Jace the Mind Sculptor is the Jace. It's the card you think of. And I'm glad that even with all of the consternation, it had to be banned, it had to be unbanned, people hate it, people love it. Even all of that history, the fact that we have it as the flag bearer, as the signpost for what Jace is and who Jace is, I think is important. And I'm glad that it exists.
Yeah.
Card's fantastic. Let's move here to our number 2. Aaron, what is your number 2?
My number 2 is just a first time reprinted. One of those cards that you just look at and you're like, why? Like, who thought this was a good idea? Who thought that we needed this? I have lost to this card so many times, and Wizards thought they were being really slick. They were like, oh, we fixed this. You can't possibly reanimate this. That's fine because you can tinker for it. My number 2 is Blightsteel Colossus.
Yeah.
Why? So Blightsteel Colossus, originally printed in Mirrored and Besieged with 12 colorless mana. You're probably not paying that. Spoiler alert. Artifact creature, golem, 11 power, 11 toughness, trample. Infect. Indestructible. If Blightsteel Colossus will be put into a graveyard, reveal Blightsteel Colossus and shuffle it into their library instead. So, turn 1 Tinker is not uncommon, followed up with a Time Walk, and there goes the game. You can't force a Vigor this, you can't Engineered Explosive this, it has to be a very specific set of answers to be able to deal with this. You can't ping it to death with a Ballista. It's something that's very, very difficult to answer. You have to deal with it immediately. It is just this poisonous wrecking ball that is just terrifying to behold, and it's just like, why?
Yeah.
The thing is freaking $40. Wow.
Yeah. It's the one-shot robot.
Yeah, it's one-shot the robot.
Like, oh my god.
And it looks like he's getting down tonight on this extended art version.
Oh my god, I love this comic book extended art.
It's so
Giant.
funny.
He is making it happen. Yeah, this card is nutty. This card is made to be like a silly finisher. It rocks with Tinker. This rocks cubes, which is great. Like you try to sneak it in Commander games and knock people out just like that. Like this card was dope from the beginning. I can't believe it took this long to get reprinted, but
I had someone kill me with that card in Chandra's Ignition.
Oh my god, that sounds great.
And I was just like, why are you like this? Like, it was just...
That's awesome. Ruben, what's your number 2?
Hold on. I need to look at Chandra's Ignition real quick. Oh my god, that makes me so happy.
Target creature you control.
It killed everybody?
Deals damage equal to its power to each other creature and each opponent. That's infect damage. 11 infect for the whole table.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's amazing.
Like, they one-shotted the robot with the table.
I don't even want to talk about my card anymore.
Oh my god! But
I will.
Ruben needs a minute.
Yes,
I need to just give me a. Whew. But I will continue because my number 2 is a card that, despite finally getting reprinted a fair number of times, and is banned and or restricted basically everywhere except for Commander. We did need more mana crypts, and now we get the delicious Ron Spencer, like comic booky Egyptian inspired mana crypt here, which is just amazing. Mana crypt costs 0 mana. It's an artifact, and in this set, it is a mythic, of course. At the beginning of your upkeep, flip a coin. If you lose the flip, mana crypt deals 3 damage to you and it taps for 2 colorless mana. I feel like this is better than a Mox in cubes. It is just one of, if not the best, mana ramp artifacts ever made.
Still a $100 card.
Oh, yeah. Lord, yeah. When I think back, I think way, way back, at one point, I had gone into a bookstore. I had opened up the Magic novel that was on the shelf. This card fell out. I pick it up. I put it back in the novel because that's where it was. It was stuck in the back. And I put it back on the shelf because, this card is like crap and I can't play it in standard. And like, boy, what am I doing with this card? It's just going to kill me. This thing's dumb.
Well, that's also not even how the book came. You had an advertisement in the back of the book that you had to mail in to receive a copy of the book. So the one that you had must have been someone sent it in sold the book with the card. Goodness, that's incredible.
That's incredible. Yeah. I mean, they're just looking at it, I'm like, wow, did I do that? That seems nuts. Yeah. And this is just one of those cards where you're like, I mean, back in the day, no one cared about this card. Everyone's like, it's playable and nothing.
Yeah. I mean, they sold Arena and Sewers of Estark.
Yeah.
And like Nathathlani Dragon or whatever. And none of the cards there was a Badger. There was like Rabid Badger was one of the promos. And this was just another book promo that they came out with. Yeah. They weren't supposed to be good. They weren't supposed to be indelible pieces of Magic history that are restricted in Vintage, banned in Legacy, and the best cards in Cube and Commander. But here we are.
I love just watching people die to this card.
That's true.
When you get unlucky with those flips, or if you just happen to get them down low enough, and you're like, "Come on, come on."
Mm-hmm. I have killed so many people in Cube with their own Mana Crypt. I'm like, that's going to kill you. I just want you to know that's going to kill you right now.
Oh, yeah.
Not me.
If somebody shows you, Key Vault, and they got a Crypt out, it's like, okay, you get your turns, but you're in a flip. Like, we're not going out like that.
So, for my number 2, there was, twice in the preview season have I just been like completely blown away. Just like, oh my God, I cannot. That card is unbelievably gorgeous. Like, it freaks me out how gorgeous this card is. It freaks me out, A, how gorgeous this card is, B, how good this card was back in the day, and we didn't even really love it or respect it as much as we could have back then. But my God, the Sword of Fire and Ice.
Yeah.
That was done by Dan Dos Santos. Oh my Lord, this thing is gorgeous. I can't stand it, how pretty this card is. Sword of Fire and Ice is 3 generic mana for a mythic artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from red and blue. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, Sword of Fire and Ice deals 2 damage to any target, and you draw a card, and you equip it for 2 generic mana. And man, this is the sweetest. If you weren't ready to show off, the foil Sword of Fire and Ice from this box hopper collection is unbelievable.
I remember when you tweeted about this, and I could hear it in your voice, and it looks almost like a synthwave cover. Like, it just has this kind of 80s, Tron-like kind of feel to it. Like, it's just gorgeous. It's unlike anything we've ever seen. It's just beautiful. Like, it just gives you chills.
They just absolutely killed it with the box toppers this time around. I mean, every single box topper is the version I would want in my cube.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, which is fantastic. All right, we're going to move here to number 1. Now, as I understand it, there's some samesies going on.
Yeah, Ruben and I were on the same wavelength tonight.
And this would also be my number 10 through elimination. So I'll talk about my number 1, and then you guys can talk about your number 1 to close out the show. Now, again, there were 2 times during the Double Masters preview season where I was like, oh my God, I can't handle what is happening on this card. I can't stand it. It looks like it's already, if not one of the most expensive box topper versions that you can find. Man, when they busted Avacyn, Angel of Hope, as a box topper, my God, this thing is freaking unbelievable. It is gorgeous. It's amazing. It kicks all the butt in Commander and is beloved.
Vargas.
Oh my God, Randy Vargas crushed it. And just the fact that we have another reprint of this $50-something card because everyone likes
wild
Angels.
To me.
Yeah.
Angels, man. Everyone loves angels. Crappy angels, doesn't matter. They're always worth something, and this is definitely not a crappy one. Absent Angel of Hope is 3 white mana, 5 generic mana for a mythic legendary angel who is an 8/8 with flying, vigilance, and indestructible, and other permanents you control have indestructible. It's indestructible 30, and that's what you live in right there. This card is amazing.
This is another one of those nail in the coffin cards where, like, you know, your opponent can be doing something to commander and you're like, I can get out of this, it's fine. And then they slam this and you're like, oh, the game is just over. Because this isn't one of those weird cards where it has the other clause, but it itself also has indestructible. You know, it's not a shall I thing where, like, you just gotta kill shall I and then it's over. Oh, no, she's got that too. And so, you know, lands, artifacts, enchantments, everything's indestructible. That is a huge game changer. And a lot of times in commander, you'd rather just scoop it up because you're like, I literally have nothing. Like,
Everybody loves angels, man. I'm telling you, it's crazy.
I mean, when Avacyn Restored came out and we got the angel to end all angels and the demon to end all demons, and we saw Gristlebrand, we were like, I mean, Gristlebrand won, right?
Gristlebrand won big time, but
is the winner.
But that quiet in the background, man, started like 15,
but exactly,
20,
and it starts
25.
It's rolling, and now Gristlebrand is single digits. Avacyn won.
Avacyn won big time. So love that card. Love the box topper version. Wizards killed it. This your all's number 1 is my number 10, and that's okay because I love this card too. Feel free, whoever would like to take it, to take it now.
Aaron?
So this was a card that, you know, may not necessarily be the most powerful, and it actually was revealed or officially previewed later on in the season, and just had been a card that had become a meme at this point. It was something that, you know, Wizards had promised us was coming down the pike, and we really didn't know when. You know, it meant a lot to the Professor. Obviously, the Pauper folks are really excited about it, and they ended up kind of changing the rules a little bit to accommodate this. So it's going to be a really exciting card in Commander as well. Our number 1 is Oubliette.
Yeah. Oubliette, originally from Arabian Nights, colorless black. It's an uncommon in Double Masters.
Yeah.
The original phraseology is when Oubliette enters the battlefield, exile target creature and all auras attached to it. Note the number and kind of counters that were on that creature. When Oubliette leaves the battlefield, return that exiled card to the battlefield under its owner's control, tapped, with the noted number and kind of counters on it.
Note them.
If you do, return the other exiled cards to the battlefield under their owner's control, attached to that permanent. The updated version, as is printed in Double Masters, gets rid of all that madness, all that junk, and just simply says, when Oubliette enters the battlefield, target creature phases out until Oubliette leaves the battlefield. Tap that creature as it phases in that way.
I like it.
Which means auras and equipment phase out with it, while permanents are
and
phased
the tokens
out.
on it.
Yeah, and while permanents are phased out, they're treated as though they don't exist. So this is a huge, huge move. First of all, to get Oubliette back in print. This was a pushing $50 Arabian Nights card.
I know.
It's Oblivion Ring in black, and that's kind of a big deal, particularly in a world where you need really cool, efficient removal like this, which is great. So those, like all those words you said before, so many words, they literally can't put all of the words on there without making it some font that is like comical. We're an Ice Cauldron plus or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it got another version. That's fantastic. Oubliette is terrific. The card itself is great. And this card, to me, just says another kind of thing of like, you know, if you make old cards different, if you make cards work differently, that's okay. Like it's still magic. Like you can still read the first one, kind of get what it does, but this second one does such a better job at explaining what they wanted the card to do.
Yeah.
Yep, cutting to the chase a lot better. And the word Oubliette, it's one of these old cards that it makes sense in a fantasy sense. If you're telling a story, something like Animate Dead, something like Ice Cauldron, those make sense from a conceptual standpoint. But when you try to put them into words on a Magic card, doesn't work. Doesn't work anymore. It's too many words.
It's one of those cards I remember being a kid, because a lot of us have learned words from Magic that you can only see, like Jocklehops or whatever. I remember being like a little kid who thought I was so smart and just trying to like work it into conversation, be like, oh yeah, I'm in an oubliette over this. Like,
What's an oubliette? Well, it's a secret dungeon.
Yeah, you see, it's very, very cool spell.
Sure.
And I like the word pernicious, for example.
Pernicious is a good one. Extirpate, I used in a college paper one time. That was good.
I like it.
Magistrate.
Macabre,
that was
the
good.
first time
I've
I
gotten
saw
tricked a couple times though. there's a couple of Baloth I used, and it was like, that's not actually a word, even though it's on like 8 magic cards.
Yeah, like Saproline is an actual thing they made up, which was a thing.
Exactly.
And that was our top 10 double Masters cards. You'll see them on screen now for your review. Take a look at my list, Aaron's list, Ruben's top 10, and we want to hear from you about what card we did not talk about. And we'll select our favorite to win a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Aaron.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ruben.
Thanks, Evan.
Thank you, Aaron.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ruben.
Thanks, Evan.
As we move on to our final slide, I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, CardHoarder.com, my co-host, Aaron Campbell and Ruben Bressler. You guys for watching and listening. I hope you support us at Patreon.com/MagicMikes. Follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at Twitch.tv at MagicMikes, on Twitter at MagicMikesCast, our Magic Mike subreddit, and like the Magic Mikes page on Facebook. Talk to us privately at MagicMikesPodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at MagicMikesPodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes and Spotify. Or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.